Well, good evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans. Happy Sunday to you folks, and welcome in to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7 365 comprehensive home for the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks. Back with you folks on this Sunday night, June 28th, 2015, here on Sparks 365 postgame to recap tonight's close but no cigar LA Sparks loss tonight to the longtime WNBA rivals, the New York Liberty, 79-70. Good evening, folks, alongside Chris Amanci from the Internet Studios up in Anaheim, California. Of course, Cal Mulher joining you here from Studio 171 in San Diego, fully recovered from my cracked ribs suffered on Tuesday. Other than that, Chris, how's everything going?
Nothing much. Just hanging here. Just now, it's now official. Just can't wait to go to my second game this season already. Next week against the Phoenix Mercury.
Well, I was going to get to that, Chris, and thanks for, again, stealing my thunder here. But, folks, confirmed set in stone, there's going to be an addentation to our LAS 365 host meet and greet schedule. It'll be a solo show next Sunday, Chris only next Sunday. So if you did not get a chance to meet the Swingman host, please do so on Sunday. And, of course, the main guy will be back up in LA in 2 weeks, July 21st. And 22nd, both those games against Phoenix and the Liberty. As we get to the game tonight, folks, and the LA Sparks tonight, trying desperately to find some sort of spark to get rid of this long drought of losses. They got one spark back in Chrissy Tolliver, but the Sparks ultimately still fell, though, to the longtime WNBA Eastern Conference rivals, the New York Liberty, up in the Sparks tonight, 79-70. Final game line, or quarter line score line here for Los Angeles, 22 in the first, 16 in the second, 15 in the third, and 17 in the fourth for the game total of 70. For the Liberty, 23 in the first, 18 in the second, 16 in the third, and 22 in the fourth for their game total of 79. Christy Tolliver in her first game back after missing the first 6 games because of overseas duties. 30 points, a new career high, 9 of 15 from the field, and the all-important 3 for 5 from beyond the arc and 9 for 9 at the charity stripe today, but they'll finish minus 11 in plus-minus efficiency. Jantel Lavender, 14 points. Nneka Ogwumike, 13. Newcomer Jasmine Lister, 9 points. And then after that, major drop-off. Tamika Johnson, 3. Jen Hampson, 1. Jen Lacey, Mariana Tolo, Maria Abdi, Elena Beard, Andrea Hoover, and Aaron Phillips all held scores. And, of course, Phillips and Beard still out with a knee and foot injury. For the Liberty in the ballgame, Sugar Rogers, 23. Tina Charles, 16. Tanisha Wright, 12. Essence Carson and Kia Stokes, 9. Brittany Boyd with 4. Carolyn Swords and Swin Cash all with 3. And, of course, Candace Wiggins, Rebecca Allen, and Avery Warley Talbert all held scoreless. Wiggins with 5 minutes played, Allen and Warley Talbert DNPs in the ballgame for Bill Lambier's Liberty, who have won back-to-back games over Los Angeles, including last year's defeat at Staples Center on July 23rd. Game played tonight from the world's most famous arena, MSG, in New York, New York. Total attendance, 8,926. Time of the ballgame, 1 hour and 58 minutes. Daryl Humphrey, Eric Bruton, and Kevin Sperrick, your men in gray and orange tonight. 1 technical foul charge to the Liberty in the ballgame. 1 lead change, and 5 times tonight the teams were tied. Now, Chris, obviously this loss hurts more than the other 6 because you lost to your longtime Eastern Conference rivals who you have a lot of history with, of course, being one of the 4 remaining franchises in WNBA history, and, of course, the long-running rivalry between the Sparks fan base and the Sparks franchise against Bill Lambier, of course, for many, many years of a lot of negative side effects to the story. But, Chris, more importantly, man, obviously, Chris, the loss hurt, but in your mind, does it hurt more, though, that the Sparks lost to a longtime rival? I know that it hurts a lot when you lose to Phoenix, but is this one, Chris, hurt about as much as it would losing to the Mercury, because you know that these teams have so much history on their side in regards to league-wide and, of course, records that still stand tall after 19 seasons. Chris, does this loss kind of hurt a bit more because you lost to your longtime Eastern Conference foes?
Yeah, hurts more. It's just like the Lakers and the Celtics, longtime rivals, and everything, and just losing to Liberty just hurts a lot more.
Yeah, Chris, I think whenever you lose to your big rivals, it always hurts a lot more. So, obviously, the game again, 79-70. But, Chris, okay. Chris, has been tough sitting here, man, in this host chair, sitting here and talking about all these losses. But it's, Chris, like I said, though, man, improving slowly but surely, Chris. One more puzzle piece back tonight, folks. Kristi Tolliver, in spite of loss, folks, is our player of the game. Her first game back after serving overseas with the Slovakian national team for the Euro basketball tournament, missing the first 6 games, comes back and does not skip a beat at all in 36 minutes. As I said, 36 minutes played, 9 of 15 from the field, 3 for 5 from beyond the arc, 9 for 9 from the charity stripe, finishing with 30 points, Chris. 30 points, a new career high for Kristi Tolliver. And Chris, certainly, man, not missing a beat of the action as KT. So, Chris, obviously, man, you knew that she was going to be in shape for the season, playing those, missing those first 6 games being over with the Slovakian national team. But, Chris, this was basically like making a mid-season trade without making a roster transaction. Getting her back in the flow of things is another puzzle to the jigsaw puzzle that has been the season so far, Chris. Any thoughts about how great KT played for Game 1 of her season tonight?
KT looked very great out there. A career high in points, and it was pretty much like you said on Twitter. She was pretty much raining out there in threes.
Yeah, Chris, except the rain would be nice out here. We kind of need the rain, not in New York. Bring it back home, please. But Chris, overall though, man, again, Chris, it's like, you kind of have victory, taken out of your hands, from the hands of victory. You have it snatched away, Chris, by the jaws of defeat. And that's just kind of how it's been. As I told you a few nights ago, Chris, off air, it's been that way post that Tuesday game versus Minnesota, where you kind of stumbled in the second half, where, Chris, now it's not quite a complete team almost. We know that the Sparks are still very short-handed roster and depth-wise. But now, okay, Nneka's fully healthy. Lav's playing great. Tolliver's back in the flow, Chris. Now we're just waiting on a few more puzzle pieces to hopefully complete this jigsaw puzzle, which, of course, is getting a healthy Aaron Phillips and Elena Beard back sometime soon, hopefully. But again, as I've said plenty of times, folks, again, still no word about the time that they could be missing. And from what I'm hearing, Elena Beard could be out longer than maybe what we probably have suspected as fans and reporters and media members. And, of course, Chris, the bigger puzzle piece to complete this, of course, is if and when, and I say that, Chris, because as I said, man, there's still been rumors about this, but again, if and when Candace Parker, your 2-time MVP, does return to the flow of things, Chris, then LA, hopefully by that time, Chris, will be fully healthy and can get back on track. But as we have said, man, over the past couple of days, again, some spattering of rumors, Chris. Obviously, the record doesn't help, man, that perhaps we may not see Candace Parker at all this season because of how the Sparks have played so far this season. Now, again, Chris, I don't, again, as I said on Tuesday, Chris, again, I'm not sure. Again, I cannot confirm nor deny the reports about Parker staying, or of her playing at all, Chris. But also, man, I know the record's bad. But, Chris, seeing, though, that they're getting the players back in the flow, Chris, obviously, when Candace comes back, Chris, is that probably the time where hopefully that LA kind of does this and turns the switch on and starts winning ball games, hopefully?
Yeah. I think once Candace Parker returns and they start clicking and everything, I think they'll get in the flow and turn it around.
Now, again, folks, there has been some rumors amongst fans and media pundits about Candace Parker possibly being out for the entire season. And again, folks, I cannot confirm nor deny, but again, the latest news I received a few days ago and a couple weeks ago is Candace Parker's even made public, too, that she will be playing at some time this season. So we can kind of, as I said on Tuesday, I'm not going to get fired up, but again, kind of, lay low here, relax a bit. She is due back this season. Was informed about that by some members of the press that she will be back sometime soon. So again, but I guess, Chris, like I said, man, on Tuesday and again here is you kind of have to weather that storm and, just kind of sit down, shut up, and kind of just, let things kind of dictate themselves, Chris, and you kind of just wait until Candace Parker gets back. Because obviously, Chris, as we know, man, of course, Brittany Griner coming back a couple last night with the Mercury in Minnesota last night, so obviously waiting for that, Chris, to know. So, Chris, Phoenix played the waiting game. Now LA's going to play the waiting game with Candace Parker, right?
Right. Agreed.
So, again, folks, tonight the Sparks, again, getting Chris Tower back, but, of course, the Sparks ultimately succumb to the New York Liberty tonight, 79-70 at MSG. Now, Chris, New York, on the other hand, LA really had no real answer tonight for Sugar Rogers and/or Tina Charles, Chris, who TC went off on LA last year when these two teams hooked up back at Staples Center this past season. Chris, one tweet here from a good friend of ours, from JT Thomas of ESPN Radio. He says, keep improving, keep up the good work. So we are glad that JT's watching, and we hopefully JT will be able to bring you on here sometime soon. I know that you have your main concerns and your main workload with ESPN Radio, but we will hopefully have you on here sometime in the future. We'd love to bring you on, of course, sometime soon. But, Chris, getting back on track, though, to the Liberty. Again, Chris, as you kind of threw out there that one time during the season preview show where you said, hey, maybe the Liberty have a chance to go to the conference finals. Well, Chris, so far, you've gotten the return on your dollar, man, that you probably were wanting last year with LA against Phoenix. But, Chris, the Liberty, for the first time in a while, look like a complete team now, where Bill Lambier's a bit, kind of dialed back now, where he's not in charge of being both GM and head coach. You can just focus on one job. And, okay, Chris, I know that Bill, probably has these dates or these games with LA circled on his calendar, Chris, as his mentality as a player and coach, of course. But, Chris, would you probably say that in spite of how bad it's been with the Liberty, with all the turnover, with them firing Bill over the offseason, of course, Isaiah Thomas coming into the fold, that, Chris, in spite of all the off-court turmoil, Chris, are the Liberty finally a complete team after many years of rebuilding? Yes or no, and why?
Yeah, it looks like they're pretty much the team now. Since Bill Lambier hasn't give away his young players, and he give them some shot and some minutes, and they're pretty much contending out there.
Chris, as I said on Tuesday, there's been a lot of surprises in the WNBA so far between the Sun, the Shock, who have won their 7th straight game, I believe. I may be wrong on that, but I believe they either tied or win ahead of the franchise record. So, Chris, obviously, as I said on Tuesday, Chris, it's a changing of the guard almost. It's not Phoenix. It's not L.A. It's Minnesota a bit, Chris, but it's not the same teams you're normally used to seeing in the upper echelon, upper level of the league, Chris, where it's good that there is a change of scenery, Chris, where it's not always LA, it's not Phoenix, it's not, it's not Minnesota, and not Atlanta or Indiana, Chris, where you have these, younger teams. You have Connecticut, you've got Tulsa, you've got Washington. Chicago may have the MVP of the entire season on their squad right now. So, Chris, I guess, man, as a whole, good or bad, changing of the guard, new, fresh blood, leading the way in both conferences right now between the Sun, Mystics, the Sky, and, of course, Chris, you still have the Lynx, of course, but also, man, Tulsa, finally back on the map in the WNBA after many, many hard years down there, Chris, in Oklahoma. Good or bad, Chris, for the league that there's a bit of change of scenery? What do you think?
Pretty much very great, seeing new teams on top of the conferences, not like Phoenix, the Lynx, the Sparks, and the Tulsa's back on the top, and everything, and the Mystics, the Liberty, pretty much up there, and everything.
Now, Chris, as you are well aware of, I don't have to tell you this, but I'm sure some people know very well that today, in my case, folks, was a win-win situation. As you know, I've exclusively said, I am a part-time Liberty fan, but as I was talking to Swin Cash while we were getting ready to come on air tonight, because we were just having a conversation on Twitter, that as you are very well know of, again, folks, as you, again, know, as we know, again, I'm not the biggest Bill Lambier fan, or fan of the Liberty. Again, I'm impartial towards that organization. But of course, Chris, as you know, man, I could not. Zero tolerance rooting against, of course, Swin Cash, Brittany Borden, of course, Chris. No way I am rooting against my hometown homegirl, Chris. Can't do that. Of course, had to root for Candace Wiggins, folks. I know she only played 5 minutes and didn't score any points and almost fouled out of the ball game, but can't do that to a very good friend of mine in the league. So just going to let that one go. But again, good to see three of my favorite players doing well with the Liberty. And of course, the Liberty beat the Sparks tonight, 79-70. Chris, a couple of other games in the WNBA this evening. The Chicago Sky visited the Washington Mystics this evening from the Verizon Center over there in Washington, D.C. The Mystics outlast Chicago by the final score this evening of 86-71. Now, the only problem here, folks, is WNBA.com is now showing the highlights on the game recaps now. So that's the sound you're going to hear as they're showing the highlights now. But the Mystics beat the Chicago Sky 86-71 from our nation's capital this evening. The final line score here for Chicago, a bit of a rough day for the Sky today, 16-18, 1 through 2, 14-23 through quarters 3 and 4 for the game total of 71 for Washington, 24 in the first, 19 in the second, 23 in the third, and 20 in the fourth for the game total of 86. For Chicago, my early favorite for WNBA MVP, Elena Delle Donne, 26, Cappie Pondexter, and Allie Quigley, 10, Jessica Breland, 8, Bethany Laney with 6 points, Jamira Faulkner, 5, Courtney Vandersloot, 4, Clarissa Dos Santos, 2 points, Cheyenne Parker, Sasha Goodlett, Jackie Jamellos, and Tamara Young, all with no points in the ballgame. For the Washington Mystics, folks, Emma Miesemann, 20 points, Stephanie Dolson, 19, Taylor Hill and Ivory Lotta, all with 16, Kara Lawson, 7, Allie Mallett, Tierra Finn Pratt, Natasha Cloud, and Arminty Harrington, all with 2 points, Kayla Thornton, Bria Hartley, and Kia Vaughn, all held scoreless for Mike Tebow's Mystics in the ballgame. Now, Chris, Chicago, who I believe is as I said, is my favorite still to win the conference title, Chris, off night. But, Chris, it's not about Chicago, man. It is about the stellar play of Elena Delle Donne, Chris, how she has, Chris, basically duplicated what Maya Moore did last season, which was just going off in every game, Chris. I mean, she had the 45-point game in that OT win over Atlanta a few nights ago, Chris, and how she has just been playing, balling out and going out of her mind. Chris, I know that you have not really watched the league for a long time, man, but seeing back-to-back years, Chris, of 2 extraordinary seasons so far, between Maya Moore last year with the 20 or more points in 12 games, where now, Chris, it's EDD basically owning every team put in front of Chris to throw up, Chris, 45 points in a WNBA game, Chris. I know overtime was added, but again, Chris, 45 points nonetheless, Chris. What do you think about how great her and the Sky, Chris, as a whole have played so far this season?
Very great out there this season with EDD going out against every team, and just looking very great out there.
Yeah, Elena Delle Donne, folks, in my opinion, early candidate for MVP. Quick shout-out to Sean Bush, who's watching us on the network. Thanks, Sean, for dropping in and saying hi. Glad you're enjoying your Sunday and stopping by to watch us ramble about the game tonight and a couple games across the league. But in any case, again, thanks for watching. And Chris will be there on Sunday versus Phoenix. I won't be there until the 21st and 22nd. So hopefully I'll be sure to stop by and say hi to you and the kids again like I did at the home opener. One more game tonight in the WNBA again, folks. As I said, the league page is now showing the highlights on the game recaps here. So, again, you had to hear that advertisement quickly. But, again, the Shock, by the way, folks, who have completely shocked the league so far, took down the Seattle Storm tonight 93-89 from the BOK Center down there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Final line score for Seattle, 28-14 in the first half, 33 in the third, and 14 in the fourth for the game total of 89 and for the Shock, 25-20 quarters 1 through 2. And 24-24 in the fourth of the game total of 93. For Seattle, Ramu Takahashi and Jewel Lloyd all with 21 points. Crystal Langhorne 14, Alicia Clark 11, Renee Montgomery and Angel Goodrich all with 8, Quantriana Hollingsworth with 4, Jenna O'Hay with 2, Abby Bishop held scoreless, Sue Bird, Markeisha Gatling, and Kalena Mosqueda-Lewis all held out of the ball game this evening for Jenny Busick Storm. And for the Shock, Skylar Diggins, 31 points tonight, Raquana Williams and Planette Pearson all with 19, including Planette Pearson's 3,000th career point in the ball game. Courtney Paris with 8, Karima Christmas with 7, Brianna Kessel with 4, Amanda Zowie B with 3, Vicky Bogg with 2, Jordan Hooper no points, Tiffany Jackson-Jones, Teresa Poncianis, and Odyssey Sims all with no points in the ball game, all held out of the ball game this evening from the BOK Center down there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, Chris, the Storm, they have been up and down so far this season, of course. Started the year off with 2 wins over a very shorthanded LA club. Where now, Chris, it's almost like back to reality. You know, you're not playing Los Angeles, you know, every other game you turn around, Chris. You got to play the other tougher teams in the conference. And, of course, Chris, losing a heartbreaker last night to the Stars. Kayla McBride winning that game in San Antonio last night at the buzzer. So, Chris, I guess, man, you know, I would assume, of course, you know, Sue Bird, Chris, of course, being the only real veteran on this Storm roster, of course. As I know, man, it's tough for one main player, Chris, like Sue Bird, or, of course, Chris, in my case, seeing Jessica Scorza being the lone senior for Point Loma Nazarene University last basketball season, Chris. How much does it hurt a team, Chris, when they only have one key component on their roster that can really hold that team together for really, Chris, such a short amount of time?
Just very not great. See that? One player carries all the load, and just very hard, and pretty much won't get the job done.
Now, Chris, out of the 2 top 3 picks the Storm had, Chris, I know that there was a lot of negativity about Jewel Lloyd in her first few games, Chris. Of course, we had talked about, of course, you know, the game kind of being a bit faster than her. Of course, we know there was a lot of controversy about her, you know, why you leaving school early. Well, Chris, it looks like, man, it took her a few games, but now she's kind of settling in finally. Of course, today, 21 points in 28 minutes played. So, of course, Chris, you know, and Chris, I know what she's going through, man. I did the same exact sort of thing when I was in high school. I went from playing on a very lesser team to the varsity team. My next season, of course, Chris, bigger, stronger, faster players were a lot better than I was at that point in time, Chris. Obviously, it took time, Chris. But now, Chris, you're worried about Kalena Mosqueda-Lewis out of UConn, who went 3rd overall after, of course, the Storm having those first 2 picks in the draft, Chris. And I know there's been a lot of talk about her and her weight. She's had a lot of weight problems, Chris, this season. As we know, of course, other players like Shoni Schimmel, Danielle Adams, Courtney Paris have had weight trouble in the past, Chris. I guess, you know, is this almost like a time, Chris, where KML kind of uses the time to either get herself in shape, or, Chris, Chris, you know, is there really a game plan, I guess, to use Kalena in her full capacities? You know, man, that, you know, obviously the bigger bodies in basketball sometimes don't translate well to the game, Chris. So I guess, you know, is Jenny Busick, Chris, making the right move by not playing her simply because there are a few problems with her weight at all, or what do you think?
Probably because of her weight, but I think she probably may work out maybe.
I think at the same time, Chris, that as I said with Jewel Lloyd, Chris, they're both way below the depth chart right now, Chris. I mean, I think that the game is just a bit too quick for both of them right now. I know Jewel Lloyd, Chris, is making strides, but of course KML, Chris, has not been the same so far since leaving UConn. So obviously it'll take time, Chris. Like we said about Jewel Lloyd, it'll take time, and KML will be making her threes again sometime very, very soon. But again, folks, to recap your Sunday of action in the WNBA today: Liberty 79, Los Angeles 70, Washington 86, Chicago 71, Tulsa 93, Seattle 89. To check those WNBA Boost Mobile standings for you folks real quick. And wow, it is certainly a lot different this time around, folks. Connecticut and Tulsa, both on top of the conferences with long sustained streaks. The Sun in front by a game and a half over Washington. The Sun have won 7 straight. They're 7-1. Washington 6-3. Chicago and New York 5-4. Atlanta 4-6. Indiana 3-6 in the bottom half of the conference. For the West, the Tulsa Shock 8-1 on the season, and on a 8-game winning streak, 5-0 at home. The 8-game win streak, folks, is now the longest in Detroit/Tulsa Shock franchise history. Minnesota 1 game out, 7-2. Phoenix 3-5, 4.5 games out. San Antonio 2-6, 5.5 out. Seattle 2-7, 5 straight losses for the Storm, 6 straight losses, and of course LA 0-7, 7 games back, 7 straight losses. But Chris, in spite of how bad it's been for the Sparks, Chris, in spite of that record, believe it or not, folks, in spite of how terrible that record may sound, the Sparks are only 1.5 game out of 4th place in the conference. Chris, normally, man, the West, in both sides of the coin, NBA and WNBA, Chris, even the NBA D-League, Chris, the Western teams are always the powerhouse teams, and the East is always a bit bad. You know, a little bit on the weak side, Chris. How much, Chris, you know, does it kind of make you laugh? Like, wow, here, Chris, you know, here an 0-7 team is only a game and a half out of the last playoff spot, Chris. The 7-man, or Chris, it's a phrase question, Chris. How wacky is that you can have no wins but still be a game and a half out of 4th place in the conference? I don't quite get this, man.
Just weird and funny, and they still got a shot. And like I said, at least we're losing now. Get all the losses out of the way, and then come playoff time, probably clicking on all cylinders and make it all the way, just like before the Indiana Fever.
I was just going to say that, Krista, we had talked about this on Friday night before I'd gone to work. The KISS game versus the Arizona Rattlers last night was, yeah, I mean, the season vaguely reminds me of that 2012 season for the Fever, Chris, again, how they had injury problems, started very slow, but of course got hot at the right time, where Chris, in recent years for LA, it's been hot and then ice cold when it counts the most. And it's been that way since 2000, and at least since Candace Parker's rookie season, maybe even after losing to the Shock in 2003, it's been that way. But I just, Chris, I mean, it just, I don't know, man. This has been, you know, a very wacky season on the floor, off the floor, because you know about, of course, Brittany Griner coming back last night, Chris. Good to see Brittany, Chris, you know, in my opinion, great to see her back on the floor. I know that she has had a lot of personal demons to overcome during the entire offseason. Of course, you know, the failed marriage, of course, with Glory Johnson that lasted maybe about as long as my longest relationship with one of my girlfriends when I was in high school or out of college or out of high school. It lasted about 2 weeks, of course. And, of course, the problems with the legal system, of course, Chris. And, Chris, to finally see her back, you know, after all the stuff, Chris, and to play her first game last night, great to see her back in the course, Chris. I know that, you know, of course, LA fans, Chris, do not like the Mercury fan base and or the franchise as a whole, but of course, Chris, you know, when a player, Chris, in a post team has something like that happen, you kind of have to feel bad for them, Chris. So in your mind, Chris, real quick before we do cut, Chris, thoughts about seeing Brittany Griner come back last night after a very rugged personal offseason for her this past offseason. What do you think?
I think it was very good to see Brittany Griner back there on the court, what she's been through in the offseason.
Yeah, a lot of hurdles for her to jump over, folks, over the offseason, but glad to finally have Brittany Griner back in the WNBA this season. Of course, you can see Brittany with Chris next Sunday when the Merc pay a visit to Staples Center next Sunday at 2 p.m. Of course, folks, the upcoming Spark schedule, a 3-game homestand. Can Staples Center be that spark plug for the Sparks to get their first win of the season? Thursday, Friday, Sunday home games. Of course, Thursday with San Antonio, 7:30 tip-off. Friday versus the scorching hot Tulsa Shock, 7:30 tip-off. And, of course, Sunday, longtime rivals hook up once again for the 19th year in a row. Sparks and Mercury, LAS 265 host meet and greet night, with Chris being there at 2 o'clock on Sunday. So again, folks, Sparks Stars on Thursday, Sparks Shock on Friday, Sparks Mercury on Sunday, 2 o'clock tip. All 3 games can be seen on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet and Time Warner Cable Deportes. With that, Chris, your final thoughts about tonight's game and the upcoming 3-game homestand with the Stars, Shock, and Mercury. Go for it.
Just great effort out there tonight for the Sparks. They tied it up with Chris Tolliver pretty much letting it all out there and just fell up short. But like we said, slowly improving. Got to get their puzzle pieces back. And pretty much this homestand, pretty much the Sparks, like you said just a minute ago, maybe we'll find their spark to turn this around.
The road is never kind. Can the friendly confines of the big office, Staples Center, be the place where the Sparks finally notch win numero uno? But on Sunday, June 28, 2015, Game 7 of the 2015 season, the longtime Eastern Conference rival New York Liberty sent the Sparks to their 7th straight loss as the Liberty beat the Sparks tonight 79-70. And of course, folks, Sparks' upcoming homestand again coming up on Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. For more information on tickets, log on to lasparks.com or call 844-GO-SPARKS. With that, folks, until sometime this week, have a safe night. Drive home safely. Thank you all for coming. And good night now. This has been the LA Sparks 365 Network. We are Sparks. We are LA. We are with WNBA. We'll see folks sometime this week. And, of course, postgame coverage on Thursday. No postgame coverage on Friday. We'll have plenty of postgame coverage on Sunday after the Sparks take on the Mercury at Staples Center on Sunday. With that, folks, for Chris Mancy in Anaheim, Cal McClurkin San Diego signing off. See you folks sometime this week. Bye-bye.